to Food with the First Lady, where today we're doing spice, rice, and everything nice. We're going to start today with bread pudding. Now, bread pudding is usually known for somewhere around in the New Orleans area, the Cajun area. But around here, those of us thrifty women, bakers, housewives, like to use our old bread for something because we don't want to throw it away. So what are we going to use it for? We're going to make some bread pudding. Now this bread that I have today is bread that my daughter LuAnne makes, and this is what I call sweet sourdough. It kind of tastes like Hawaiian rolls that you would buy at the store, or Hawaiian bread that you would buy, because it has kind of a sweetness about it. And I think that it really makes the bread pudding taste really good. So the recipe that we have calls for 6 slices of bread. And now you can use any old loaf bread that you want. You could use anything as long as it's not like wheat bread with seeds and stuff wouldn't do too well, but any white bread you could use. But what I do when I make bread pudding is I use this. So 6 slices is what it calls for. So as far as this bread is concerned, that's going to be like half of this loaf. So I'm going to go ahead and slice this loaf in half. I'm just going to set this to the side over here. And then I'm going to cut 6 slices out of this bread. So what we're going to do, of course, if you have already sliced bread, if you have just any cheap bread that you have, you can make this. It will make up just fine. Of course, the taste will be a little bit different. I would not, as I said before, I wouldn't use wheat bread. I think that wheat bread I just don't think it'd be as good. Now, some people do use like homemade sourdough bread, which we'll show you some of that later. That's like maybe brioche or maybe a boule or an artisan loaf, anything like that. Thing made with yeast would work, but nothing with any kind of flavor or seeds or anything. I'm going to spray my dish here with some cooking spray, and we'll just go ahead and put our pieces of bread in here. Now I'm cutting these, I'm going to say maybe into 1-inch cubes. I have never cut them very small. Use this what I do. Of course, you could tear it. You don't have to just cut. It doesn't have to be in uniform pieces or anything like that. Just cut it, tear it, whatever. You could also use rolls. If you didn't have any bread, you had some old, a lot of times you invite people to your house and you serve bread, and everybody doesn't eat bread. And usually, almost every time, there's going to be some bread left over. And you don't even have to use the same. Let's suppose that I had a group of people over and I had a couple of rolls left over. And then I had a couple slices of bread over here left over. And then I had whatever. You could make up 6 slices worth out of buns or a hamburger bun. You could use a hamburger bun as long as it didn't have sesame seeds on it. If you use a hot dog bun, anything like that, really make it great. No rhyme or reason here. So there's my 6 slices. I've got some crumbs here, but that's okay. We're going to move this to the side. Okay, so you can see, here you go, here we go. Here's just plain bread. All right, now we're going to take, what we have here is 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Now this is not margarine. It's not, anything other than just real butter. So we've got 2 tablespoons and it is melted. So I'm just going to drizzle that over. That's not much. And you're going to say, that's not much, but it makes a difference. So there's our 2 tablespoons of butter. Okay, then we're going to take a half a cup of raisins. Now some people don't like raisins. I do, so I put it in. That's what the recipe calls for. I have used craisins. They work just as well. For the people who do not like raisins, I have done apples. Or you could just leave it out altogether. Don't do apples, don't do raisins. Just leave it out altogether. All right, so that's my base. All right. So that is my bread, the melted butter, and the raisins. Okay. So So now let's do the custard part. Okay, so to my bowl, I'm going to add 3 eggs. I'm going to go ahead and whip up those eggs before I add anything else, because I want to make sure they're good and whipped up. Not frothy, but just completely incorporated. To that, I'm going to add 3/4 a cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of real vanilla. I don't believe in vanilla that's not real, so make sure it's real vanilla. And I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. I'm going to add my milk to this, but it's going to mix up better if I mix my cinnamon into the sugar before I add my milk. Okay, so now 2 cups of milk. This is whole milk. I've not tried it with skim or 2%. I know this is a lot of calories, but I just think that, well, obviously your pudding is going to be richer. And already, girls, guys, listen, you've got bread in here, sweet bread in here, and it's already got butter on it. So hey, might as well just go for the whole thing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pour this on here. All right. Now, of course, we got to use our whisk. We got to get every bit out of our bowl here because we don't want to waste any of it. So we're going to get every bit, pour it in there. All right, now, for those of you who cook and make breakfast casserole with eggs and sausage or bacon and cheese and all that, when you do that and you make something similar and you pour the eggs and milk over it, you let it sit in the oven overnight, in the fridge overnight to soak it up. We don't do that. That's not what this recipe calls for. What we're going to do is just push the bread down to be submerged under that milk. So we're going to go on over here. I'm going to put it in a 350-degree oven, and it's going to cook for 45 to 50 minutes or more. We're going to cook it until the middle is puffed up because we want to make sure all those eggs are cooked. We don't want to eat raw eggs. So we're going to make sure all that's done. So we'll be back in a little bit and we'll show you what this looks like. Our bread pudding is done. And so now what we're going to do is make some vanilla sauce. So in my pot here, I've got 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to go ahead and put that on my eye here. And we're going to mix everything together and then we'll just go from there. All right. So we've got 1 1/4 cups of whole milk, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and I'm using light brown sugar here. We've got a tablespoon of flour. This is all-purpose flour. We've got 1 egg. So I've got my egg right here in a little bitty bowl. Before I add it, to keep it from curdling, the whites, get done so quickly, I'm going to go ahead and beat it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and whisk it in this cold stuff because this stuff here, it hasn't gotten hot yet. If I were to add that egg right there in the hot, then that would not be good. And then we're going to put in a dash of salt and a dash of cinnamon. All right, there we go. Now, what I've got in here, let me say it again. What I've got in here is butter, milk, egg, tablespoon of flour, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, a dash of cinnamon, and a dash of salt. Once it comes to a boil, I'm going to turn it down and let it lightly boil, and we'll let it do that for 10 to 12 minutes. Then we'll add our vanilla. So I'll see you in 10 to 12 minutes. All right, well, let's finish up our vanilla sauce. So what do we have in here? We have the milk, brown sugar, butter, egg, flour, cinnamon, pinch of salt, tablespoon of vanilla going in. It wasn't vanilla sauce, but now it is. Well, here we go. Let's have some bread pudding. Hey everyone, welcome back to Food with the First Lady, where we today are making red beans and rice. Right here we have a large onion, 4 sticks of celery, and a package of sausage. Now I've gone ahead and cut everything up, but I wanted to show you where I take the ends of the celery and the onion and I put them in a bag. We have a small bag here. Normally I put them in like a gallon-sized bag so I can keep adding to them. Now I'm going to put these in the freezer. And next time I have bones, whether it might be beef bones or chicken bones or leftover rotisserie chicken or whatever, I'm going to put water in with it. I'm going to add these and make some stock. Right here we have our sausage, and so I've already cut up most of it. Let me show you. I'm going to cut up a little bit more. Make sure you have a good sharp knife. If my sausage were wider, I would cut it down the middle, and either I'd cut it long ways like this, or maybe even again, because when I eat red beans and rice, I want to taste some of the sausage. The sausage is the flavor. So I make sure to cut my sausage in small pieces. Now this is the kind of a sausage that is more narrow, or it's thinner. I mean, it's for more, just smaller. So it's okay, I don't have to cut it in half. Okay, so what we're gonna do is take this over here to our big pot, and we are going to saute it. So let me add some olive oil to the pot, because we don't want it to burn at the bottom of the pot. All right, and then we're going to add everything. So I'm gonna go ahead with I already have my pan on. Go ahead with the onions and the celery. Well, I'm going to turn that down. I believe it's gone down. And then the sausage. All right, we're going to brown all this off before we let it simmer for a little bit. All right. To that, we're going to add some Creole seasoning. Now, there are all kinds of different brands that we could use, and we're going to use this one, and we're just going to put a little bit in there. Now, that's all going to be dependent, how much you put in there is going to be dependent on how hot you want it to be. So just be careful. All right, I'm going to go up with this, let's see. And we're going to keep cooking this, sauteing this, until this is brown and our vegetables are tender. So we're going to let that go. Meanwhile, right next to it, we have some hot water. We're having red beans and rice. So, in order to cook rice, what I do is, however much rice I want to make, I do like twice as much water. So, if I had 1 cup of rice, I'd put 2 cups of water in here and bring to a boil. But we're doing double that. Perfect water, you're perfect, you came on board just at the right time. But we have 2 cups of rice I'm doing today. I have 4 cups of water in here. It has come to a boil. So now we're going to go in with 2 cups of rice. I'm going to look at it and watch it come back to a boil. It's come back to a boil, so I'm going to put the lid on it. We're going to go down to simmer. It's going to simmer there for 15 minutes. So I'll set my watch for 15 minutes. When it's done, I'll turn it off and I'll have some rice. All right, guys, we're back. So now this is sauteed and the vegetables are tender, and I see the juices down there. It's kind of trying to stick to the bottom, which is okay. And my rice has gotten kind of browned. So now we're down to adding 3 cans of red beans to this. So we're going to add 1, juice and all, guys, 2, 3 cans of red beans. All right. We're going to add 2 cans of water. So this is filled with water. 1 and 2. All right. Looks kind of watery to me, but of course it does, because we've got to let it cook down. Now, guys, these are red beans. These are not kidney beans. Now, some people do use kidney beans for red beans and rice. I don't like them because a kidney bean, to me, a kidney bean is bigger, and it's, I don't know, maybe you taste more bean taste, I don't know. But I like the smaller red beans, and you can find them at the grocery store. It just says red beans. If you can't find them, there are red kidney beans, so you can use those instead. So we're going to bring this back to a boil. But before we set it to the side, we're going to go ahead and take some more of our seasoning. Now remember, the Cajun seasoning, you're going to use whatever you like, however much you like. If you like a lot, if you like it hot, pour more. I'm just going to pour a little bit in this because I don't want anybody to not be able to eat it. Of course, you can have hot sauce at the table later when you serve it. Anybody can add more, or they can add more of this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and bring this to a boil. And then we are going to let it cook for 30, 45 minutes. And when we do, we'll come back and we'll see what it is. All right, guys, this is the spice with spice, rice, and everything nice. And this is pepper jelly. I'm going to talk more about it later, but let me go ahead, go right to getting this just together. All right, right here is 1 cup. I went ahead and diced it up so I could measure out a cup of green pepper, regular sweet green pepper. These are 2 cups of jalapenos that I have previously frozen. Well, I'll talk about those in a minute. But I'm putting them in my food processor because I want to make sure they're really small pieces. Here we go. Now I'm grinding these up really, really small because nobody wants big old piece of pepper in their pepper jelly. So here we go. Let me check it, guys. Some always gets on the side. So let me push it down. Now the reason I put my vinegar, you could chop these up without the vinegar in it, but they chop up smaller and better with the vinegar in it. So here we go. A little bit more. Make sure you don't touch them. If you touch them, you can't get that hot pepper. It won't hurt immediately, but later, whoo, terrible. Then if you take your hands and wipe your face, then you got them in your eyes and everywhere else. Okay, let's transfer over here to our pot. Make sure you have a tall pot, just like when you're making any kind of jelly, because it is going to boil up. It's going to boil up when we put the sugar and everything into it. It's going to boil up a whole lot, so make sure you have one with high sides. All right, so I want to make sure you guys can see what we're doing with. Okay, so what we have in here are our peppers and 1 cup of vinegar. Okay, I'm going to add another cup of vinegar, and I'm going to add 1 box of Sure Gel. All right. Here's my jars I've got sterilizing. I tell you what, I'm going to put them over here. They're already sterilized. And now to here, I'm going to add my peppers, vinegar, and sugar, and pectin. Now we're going to bring this to a boil. I see that my pectin has not completely dissolved in there, so I love a whisk. A whisk and a spatula are my favorite instruments in the kitchen. All right, we're just going to let this come to a boil. Okay, this is boiling. So this is just my peppers, pectin, and vinegar. That's it. So now I've got 6 cups of sugar, and you're supposed to add it all at once. So here we go. All right, let me stir that in. And that's got to come to a boil, and then we'll start timing after it comes to a boil. So let me stir it in. I think I'm going to have to use my whisk again. Yeah, let me get my whisk. We'll get all that sugar incorporated in there, and we'll let it come back to a boil. Okay, so my husband Ricky, he loves to garden. His mother, his mom and dad, and his brother grew up in the edge of Tippah County. He went to school in Pine Grove, and they live almost in Prentiss County, their house where they were, and their land where they grew up. So they had a garden all of their lives, and so Ricky learned to garden from his parents. And everything that they ate were things that they had grown. So this is one thing they didn't grow. They did not grow hot peppers. They grew other kind of peppers, peas, potatoes, all kinds of things. Everything that they ate, they grew in their garden. But Ricky, in recent years, since his parents have passed away, and he has been doing the garden exclusively, he loves to do hot peppers. Now, he's done jalapenos, he's done habaneros. Those are his two main ones. Well, then he has done the little cayenne peppers, little skinny ones. He has done reapers. He has done all kinds of hot peppers. He just loves hot peppers. The hotter the better. So, and they make so well in the soil out there. So I'm like, what in the world am I going to do with all these hot peppers? So the first thing I started doing was making this pepper jelly. Now, this is something I did not grow up eating, but I know Southern women at tea parties would have cream cheese with pepper jelly and things like that. So I'm like, okay, let me see if I can make some pepper jelly. So this one I'm doing today, I've made hundreds of times. I have made jalapeno jelly. I've made habanero. I made some reaper jelly one time. I'm going to tell you the story about it. So Ricky, all the time, he always says, oh, that's not really hot. I said, oh, come taste this jelly. He said, oh, it's not really hot. You know, and I'm like, I'm gonna teach him something. So this recipe calls for 1 cup of sweet pepper and 2 cups of jalapeno peppers. Well, what I normally do is all jalapenos. I don't ever do any sweet peppers in it, but for purposes of this video, I thought, well, I better do it according to the recipe. But normally I'll do 3 cups of jalapenos or 3 cups of habaneros. Okay. So I thought, well, I am going to get him. So, because he always says, oh, things aren't hot. So I took the reapers, and I can't remember what the other ones are, the real hot ones. And some of them are red, and some of them are green. And so I thought, well, I'm going to make reaper jelly. And I can't remember what the other one's called. So I make it. So I make one, I can't remember what the other's called, but one with the reaper, green reapers, and one with the red ones that are so hot. So I do this. Okay, and so in a little dish, I put some of the reaper green, some of the reaper red. And I put them in at home on the counter after I made it. He was at work. And then I put a little thing of cream cheese beside each one and some crackers. And I told him when they came in, I said, come in and taste these and see which one you think is hotter. You know. So he unsuspecting, he just comes in there and tastes. This is coming to a boil, but not yet, but it's not a rolling boil yet. And so he comes in and tastes, and he starts coughing, his eyes start running, snot starts running out, and I'm like, he can't even speak. So he goes over there to the sink, you know, and finally we get him some milk, he drinks it. He's like, woo! Anyway, I got him. All right, this has come to a boil. So we're supposed to boil this now for 1 minute. And this is the reason right here, guys, that we've got to let it be in a tall container. Because this is really bubbled up to twice the size. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to let it go for 60 seconds. And then we're going to put it in our jars. So anyway, that was funny. All right, moving on. I have done this with red jalapenos. I made red jalapeno jelly. I've done it with, like I said, the green with the habanero and the jalapeno. I've done blueberry pepper. We have muscadines in our yard. I've done muscadine pepper. Just this week, I had cranberries left over from Christmas, and I'm like, what can I do with these? Decided to make some cranberry pepper jelly, and it turned out great. Now, those are all different recipes from what this one is. But this pepper jelly, I have given to all kinds of people. Every year, it's been a minute, my assistant says, so I'm going to take that off the heat. Every year I give the trustees at Christmas, I give them pepper jelly. Okay, now, uh-oh, my alarm's going off. All right, while that sits for just a minute, I'm going to take my jars. I'm going to go ahead and can my jars. Now the jars have been sitting here in the hot water boiling, and so we're going to take them out of the hot water. Now I've got two different sizes here. I've got the little ones and I've got the big ones. The little ones are a half pint. The big ones are a whole pint. Now they come in all shapes and sizes. This is a pint. This one's a pint, but this is a different shape. Okay. This one's a pint. That's a wide mouth jar. That's a different shape. There's another wide mouth jar. There's another half pint jar. A half pint, this one right here, this little one, is about enough for one 8-ounce container of cream cheese. All right, let me move this out of the way so you guys can see better. All right, there we go. All right, so that's dinging probably because I have this on here, but okay. So here's our pepper jelly, and we're ready now to put it into our jars. Sometimes what I do is add a little, let's see what I did. Okay, little food coloring. Let me see what color this is. Let me see if that's, yeah, it looks a little bit, to me, it's not as bright as I want it to be. This is totally optional, but I'm going to add just a couple drops of green food coloring. I don't want it to look fake, but I don't want it to look sick. So I think that's good. All right. Here we go. All right. Here we go. We'll start with this one. And we'll pour and leave a little headspace in these little ones. Of course, these are canning, this is canning equipment here, this red funnel, I guess you would call it, but it's just for canning. You probably have one, your grandmother probably has one. You can buy them at the store. You can buy the jars at the store, any grocery store or discount store. All right, now these are going to be twice as much here, these bigger ones. So they would be enough for maybe 2 things of cream cheese or whatever. All right, I'm going to need a wet paper towel that's squeezed out, that's just damp, because I'm going to have to wipe the top of these jars. Now, I'm almost finished with the jars. These are all the jars I had at the house. During the pandemic, guys, when I say that, I mean during that shelter-in-place time, there was no finding canning lids. I mean, you couldn't find them anywhere. So I did a lot of this right here and just giving them to people and without them being canned. Okay, so now here we are with our lids we're going to can. Let's talk about this. This is the same thing that you're going to do with any jar that you are canning. You want to take a wet paper towel then, and you want to wipe around the rims. Now you're wiping around the rims because there cannot be anything on the rims. If there is, it won't seal because it won't, that sealing compound won't melt and seal the tops of those. So we want to make sure all these rims are wiped. So some people say use a little vinegar. I guess that works. I don't do that. I just use a wet paper towel, squeezed out. I'll take water and put it on the paper towel and then just squeeze it out and put it on there. Okay. Now we're going to put our lids on. Okay, now these lids, you don't bring them to a boil in water. In fact, they say now you don't even have to with these new lids, you don't even have to bring them to a boil. You can just, you don't even have to put them in water. They say you can just, you're not supposed to bring them to a boil, but you don't even have to put them in water now, they say. I don't know. But I do, and this is the way I do it. This is a wide mouth as opposed to the regular mouth, which is what's on these others. All right? So here we go with our lids. You can buy the lids anywhere. All right? This has a magnet on the end. And so we use that to pick up the lids. You don't have to have that. You could just fish them out. Okay, so now we're going to put the rings on. The flat thing is called a lid, and these round things are called rings. You can buy just the lids, which is what I have here, or you can buy the lids and the rings. If you buy jars at the store, they're gonna have lids and rings already on the jar, so that's what you would use. Well, this is a bigger one. This is for the wide mouth. Okay, now I don't have room right now on my stove for my water bath canner, but we're going to come back in a minute and I'm going to show you what we do as far as securing these. Now, some people, especially older people, will say, oh, I just turned my jar upside down and it seals itself. Well, that may be for you, but according to the USDA and everything that you read, that's not a true seal. So that's what we're going to do with those. These others will not seal, so whoever gets them, they'll just take them home like this, and they'll enjoy them. Let's see what goes with what. That's not it. Must be this one. So these, leave on the, all right. All these we're going to water bath. These we're going to water bath can. These we're going to set on the counter and let them gel. And I'll come back and show you how to. Okay, now we've got a shallow pan here, and we're going to need some water in a pitcher. If you just fill a pitcher up with water. Okay, so what we're going to do is right now what we're doing is when we want to seal our jars. So we're putting our jars into a water bath. Now listen, this is not a water bath canner because we don't have one here at the moment. So what this is just a pot that will fit on the stove. And so what we've done is we're just using this pot as a water bath canner. Now I brought a trivet from home. If you set these jars straight in a pot of water, they will break. The bottom of them will break, and all the work that you've done is for nothing because they're going to crack and all that goodness is going to go all into your water. That's not going to be any good. So what you've got to do is make sure it's got a trivet in the bottom. Some websites even say you can, let me pour this in there. Some websites even say that you can use like a wadded up towel or something like that in the bottom, but it's got to not touch the bottom. Okay, so what we had here, we didn't have the water bath canner, so we're using the pot that we had. It's got a trivet in the bottom. Okay, so we brought the water to a boil, and then we put in our jars. Okay, now listen, this is a very shallow, this is not a water bath canner, it's very shallow, but you've got to have enough water in there so that your jars are covered by at least an inch of water. So that's what we did just now. I didn't fill it all the way up because once you put your jars in there, it's going to displace the water and the water is going to come up. So I didn't want to overflow my pan. I didn't know how much because I've never put anything in this particular shallow pot like that. So I went ahead and filled this about half full of water, and then I put my jars in there, and I could see that there wasn't an inch of water covering, so I had her go get me some more water. Now I covered them up. Okay, but it's not boiling anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to set our watch or timer or whatever for 10 minutes. And we're going to take the lid off, and we're going to let those jars process for 10 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll take them out. So let's go back and take out our pepper jelly. guys, this has processed. So it came to a boil, and it had an inch of water over it. So we put the timer on 10 minutes, and now we're back to take them out. So when you take them out, you need to put them in a draft-free place. In other words, they don't need to be under the air conditioning vent, because they don't want to cool too fast, because that will hurt the... Oh, did you hear that pop? Right on cue. I'm so proud of you. For our viewing audience. All right. So we're just going to wait and listen for those pops. Take them out. You can't put them, you don't need to put them right on the counter. You need to put them, and really you don't need to put them right by the stove. Now I put them by the stove here so you guys can see them. But this needs to be over somewhere else. So we'll do that and then let them sit. All right, now so what you're going to do is set these out, wait, and listen for the wonderful pops. And you would need to let these sit for 24 hours just like this without moving them. And then after 24 hours, what they say is you are to take off the ring. Because if you don't take off the ring, then sometimes if they were to unseal for some reason, you wouldn't even know it, and you might give somebody something that was messed up. So remember, this needs to be in another part of the kitchen, not right on the cabinet, but on another one, but on the but on a towel, and that will not absorb the moisture that comes off of them, and also keep them from hurting your countertop. Great, enjoy. All right, guys. Now, if we're going to have spice, we're going to have some cooling, because our mouth would burn up. So usually when I serve red beans and rice, I serve slaw as well. My family loves slaw. So what I've done first is cut up some cabbage. Now, you could put this in the food processor and you could shred it. You could shred it with a grater. I do not like it shredded. My family doesn't like it. We like it more substantially. So what I do is however much slaw I want, I cut up that much cabbage. Now here we've cut up, this is one whole small cabbage. Okay, so, but for Ricky and I, we might eat a quarter or even less. But you cut up what you want. Now, with these recipe, it's more of a method than a recipe, so I don't have any amount. So it's totally up to you. So what I've got is one whole small cabbage. Okay, so now I'm going to take some mayonnaise. Now, I've tried this with salad dressing, like Miracle Whip. It just doesn't work. So I use real mayonnaise. I have done it. I'm using jarred mayonnaise today. I have done it with homemade mayonnaise. Sometimes I make my own mayonnaise, with an egg and avocado oil and all that. I didn't today. Okay, now mustard. I am not a mustard fan, so I just put a tad in there. So here we go. That's it. Just a little bit. Now, at this point, you can add a little sugar. Now, I like it with sugar, I like it without sugar, but since we're supposed to be watching our sugar, I don't put any sugar in it. But if you wanted some sugar, then you could take your spoon, just maybe dip 1 teaspoon of sugar and sprinkle it in there. We're not going to do that today, but you can do it. Now, I do not like mayonnaise-y, heavy mayonnaise-y taste, so I thin mine with milk. So here we go. I'll pour a little bit of milk in there, and I'm going to stir it with a whisk and make a dressing out of it, okay? All right, we're making a dressing out of it, so it's not quite so so thick. All right, we're going to put a little salt and pepper here, and again, this is to taste. There's some salt. Here's some pepper. Okay, I put a little bit in there. I think I'm going to do a little bit more milk. I just don't like it to be real thick. All right, so we're going to pour it over our cabbage. Now listen, when you first pour it over your cabbage, it may seem, well, my cabbage is, it's not very creamy. Well, what I do is I put it in the refrigerator, let it sit for a little bit, and what's going to happen is the dressing is going to draw the juices out of that cabbage. and it's going to become more creamy. So you don't want it real creamy and a lot of mayonnaise and stuff on it to begin with. If you do so, then it's going to be like soup trying to dish it out of your pan later. Okay, this looks great to me. All right, so we're going to pour it in our bowl. Now you could just put it in the refrigerator like this, and if you were doing this in the morning and you were going to eat it at night, I would do that. I just leave it in my bowl or put it in a Tupperware or some kind of other container and then put it in my serving bowl later. But we're going to go ahead and put it in the serving bowl now. All right, there it is. Now we're going to cover it with plastic wrap, or we'll cover it with a plate or something. We'll put it in the refrigerator and we'll serve it later.